we're going to go back on the record here briefly.
Yes, I didn't realize Director Ford was here. I have a couple of questions I need to ask her. In this case, she was actually coming for the next case, but I've asked Ms. Thompson if that's okay if I reopen or not rest yet, so she agreed to allow me to do that. If that's
Your
okay.
chance. Get the rules.
Okay. She needs to be sworn in.
I'm sorry. Would you raise your right hand? In that report today, that you hereby solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'd like you to take a seat and state your name for the record, please, ma'am.
Marilyn Chandler Ford.
Could you tell us your occupation, please?
Yes, I'm Corrections Director at Volusia County Division of Corrections.
And how long have you been a corrections director?
Approximately 5 years.
Prior to being the director here, what was your position?
I was Assistant Director.
How long have you worked for Volusia County?
I'm in my 26th year.
How many of those years were with the Department of Correction?
All of them.
All of them. Okay, okay. I just wanted to clarify something that has come up in the first part of this case with regards to Captain Hunter. There have been some allegations that everybody knew over the years that she used foul language, that she was flirtatious, that she flatulated on people, not specific to the allegation of licking, but the other things that were alleged by Mr. Sella in terms of her behavior. You've been here a long time, you've worked with Captain Hunter for a long time. Have you heard any of those allegations before Officer Sella made his complaint?
The only thing I heard was I had been advised at some point that she may have been dating somebody, and I proceeded to call her in and ask that party and the other person, and both of them said no, they were merely friends. As for some of the flatulating, the crude language, no, I've never heard that.
If that had been reported to you up the chain of command or by anybody, what would you have done?
I would have addressed it immediately, just as when I heard something that I considered inappropriate, I checked it immediately.
There were also some questions with regards to a letter of reprimand that Captain Hunter received for an incident of horseplay in the workplace. Let me, if I may, you got it there? Thank you. Involving some boxing gloves. And without getting into the specifics of that complaint, she was found to have violated the directive dealing with providing inaccurate, misleading, or contradictory testimony or statements, official reports. You say in this letter that she wasn't entirely accurate. You didn't find that she gave a false statement to a supervisor, did you?
No,
If you had found that she knowingly gave a false statement to a supervisor, what would you have done?
taken stronger action.
Would you have recommended an internal investigation be conducted because of the nature of that or the seriousness of that?
Probably.
That's all.
Just a couple of questions regarding the boxing glove written reprimand. Did you find that there was a inaccurate, misleading, or improper report?
That is, the substance of the policy is what you're citing. It doesn't mean that a report is necessarily all three of those. I do recollect inaccuracy. I'd have to go back to the original, all the documents to see whether it was any of the others, but yes, it was an inaccurate report.
Okay, so so it's not that she inaccurately reported to a supervisor, because she is a supervisor, she's the captain.
Right.
And so the allegation in here was that she created an inaccurate report for a subordinate to sign, and that the subordinate actually signed it, and then the subordinate came back and recanted and said that that was not true. That's what's in there.
I would need to look at all the reports. Do you want to give me time to do that? But the way you posed the question, I don't know that I can answer it just on what you said without reviewing everything.
If you would just read the 2 pages behind your report.
You mean the horseplay by staff?
Yes.
The one, okay. but her report's not here,
Oh,
attached to this,
okay.
so I can't read what she said.
I mean, presumably based upon her response and what you just read, you found a violation of Volusia County Division of Corrections Policy and Procedure 10209.
Yes,
Okay. And,
C2.
and is a violation of that by a supervisor? Would that be significant?
Any officer.
Any officer? More so with a supervisor?
Maybe. I consider inaccurate reports by any member problematic.
And how about an inaccurate report prepared by a supervisor and presented to a subordinate to sign?
Well, the officer said that he agreed to sign it, so I think both of them had issues.
I don't disagree with that. But Captain Hunter, as a supervisor, we hold her to somewhat of a higher standard.
Well, I think that's why she got the discipline, yes.
What was the discipline?
This was a written reprimand.
What does that, what are the real teeth in that?
According to the county mayor rules, that is disciplinary action, and it's a pretty strong document that goes in your file, that stays in your file. That's the first, well, actually, oral reprimand, then written reprimand, then notice of suspension. So it's a lower rung of discipline, but it is discipline, so it's more than just a verbal counseling or something that is handled without this type of documentation going to a file.
Okay. Do you think that if a supervisor is found to have violated that policy, inaccuracy, misleading, contradictory, improper report, do you think that that has any bearing on that person's veracity for the truth?
It depends. I mean, an inaccurate report, certainly it didn't tell the whole story.
And so there was no suspension, no monetary penalty of any kind, it's the letter in the file, is what
In
happens
this
here.
particular instance, there was a written reprimand, yes.
And then, just one other, just to comment, you stated that, is it common knowledge that Officer Hunter actually has a child, born of a subordinate? Or
I don't know
another
how
officer?
I would
common
object
it
to the
is.
relevance of this line of questioning.
I happen to know it, I don't know how common it is.
Well, I think we are getting a little far afield from the matter.
Okay. That's all, thank you.
I have nothing further.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll turn you loose. Thank you for your testimony. Are you re-resting?
Now I'll re-rest, yes.
All right. You're through.
Calling Officer Nathan Schneider.
Good morning, sir. I saw you be sworn in earlier, but you could you state your name for the record?
Nathan Schneider.
Thank you.
Officer Schneider, how long have you been with the Department of Corrections?
Approximately 11 years.
And during your tenure, have you received any special designations or accommodations?
I've received, I want to say, 3 letters of accommodation. And I've been, I was made a field training officer, which is kind of like a promotion. You get money for it, you're expected to teach and train other officers.
So there's an increased level of responsibility?
Yes, there is.
Okay, I'm gonna take you to November 20th of 2012. Okay, you received 2 weeks earlier a notice to show up for an interview.
Mhm.
Okay, at the time that you arrived, did you have any idea as to what questioning you were going to face?
No, I did not.
You were being asked very general questions, right, concerning. I think first, Captain Venus asked you if you remember the day that Officer Seller was injured.
Correct.
You remember that you did. Then you were being asked specifics. What, right? You were being asked,
Right.
what do you remember?
And I think I even asked them to ask me some specifics because
You did.
I was having trouble remembering stuff that happened, 109 days before. I mean,
Right, right. So you asked for something specific,
correct.
and in response to that, do you recall Captain Venus saying, okay, remember, you're not the first person I've interviewed about this,
Mhm.
and I do have other statements, okay, so you need to tell the truth.
Yes, I do remember him saying that.
On being the receiving end of that statement, how did that make you feel? How did that change the
But
tone?
it automatically put me on edge because clearly, this was my first IA investigation I've ever been involved in. So I go in, I'm just trying to do the right thing, and I ask him some questions, and before we can even get into the meat of it, to me, I take it as, look here, anything you say, I'm already comparing to stuff that other people say. So, yeah, you better be on the spot with what you gotta tell me.
Okay. So, you asked for specifics, and you're specifically asked about a wet willy.
Correct.
Okay. And at the time, did you remember specifically that a wet willy happened on August 4th?
At the time, no, I didn't. I couldn't be 100% sure.
And why is that?
Because it was very commonplace for her to do that. I've seen her do it in the past.
Okay.
Like I said, just like I had said in one of the interviews, when we go in, I'm there very early in the morning. Months had passed, the incident was such, it didn't stick out in my head because it was normal, business as usual,
Okay.
right? I didn't think about it from the point that it happened to the point right until Vanessa asked me about it.
All right. So you're asked about the wet willy, you don't really recall, you're asked about flatulating, and again,
It's one of those things where if you would have asked me, have you ever seen her flashlight? I'd have said yes. If you had asked me, have you ever seen her give a wet welly? I would have said yes. But you asked me, did I see it on that morning? And I couldn't be 100% sure
okay.
that I saw it that morning. And we're told that if we can't be 100% sure when we're doing it, then our answer has to be no.
Okay, so, a couple questions later, first time that, this is the wording that you hear. Okay, did you see Captain Hunter lick Officer Sella's neck and head? And your answer is emphatically no. Why did you answer that question that way?
When he read that to me, and did the little excerpt, because I believe he read me the little.
This is before he gets to the details, the very,
All right.
it says,
He asked me, I licking his neck, and so that it was very sexual in nature is how I took it.
you're picturing, this is the neck.
Right, I'm thinking like over here, something.
He doesn't say the back of the neck and the
No,
back
he
of the neck.
doesn't, right?
It says,
So,
"Did
I'm
you
thinking
see-"
something sexual, and I didn't see it. And I
Okay.
said, no, no, I didn't see that.
So you say no, Captain Venus then provides the narrative. He says, I'm gonna read you what Officer Sella's complaint is, and he reads you the story, right? And there are some elements in that story. So in the story, now we hear it's the back of the lower neck, back of the scalp, tasting salty and spitting into the trash can, and Officer Sella says there was a lick. That's the narrative that you're read.
Right, that's what he
Okay.
read.
Your answer to that is you say, I don't remember her licking him. I don't really specifically remember flashlighting on him. And you go on, but you don't specifically address the salty comment or the spitting.
Correct, I did not.
You did not at that time. Okay. For the rest of the interview, why don't you tell the board, explain a little bit more about the sexual, why you don't remember the specifics. After Captain Manus gives you the details, one, you don't address the salty and the spitting, okay? But then you go on to talk about that you didn't see anything sexual.
Correct.
Did you see horseplay?
I would have to say yes, that I did.
Okay. It's gonna be important for the board to understand your line of sight.
Right.
Because you're saying that you didn't see
Mhm.
things. Can you describe where you were in relation to the other people in the room?
I was behind Officer Sella and Captain Hunter. The way the room is set up is there's one large room, and then kind of behind it are two other smaller offices where he was filling out his paperwork. In the morning, one of my duties is I take a trustee in, he cleans the office. So we kind of move around. I'm not even in one specific spot the whole time.
So are you supposed to be watching the
I
trustee?
am watching the trustee is what I'm supposed to be doing, making sure he doesn't, stick pins in his pockets,
Sure.
whatever it is.
An important job. I
Correct.
wanna make sure, okay.
In that time, all this is kind of going on around me while I'm trying to watch the trustee.
Okay, so it's fair to say that you were not idle and focused on
Correct.
being prepared to witness an event.
Exactly.
Okay. So you're mobile,
Mhm.
moving around, not really focused. Explain to the board what you saw and what you heard.
All right. What I saw was Captain Hunter bend down behind Officer Sella, right? Her back is to me, he's to me. She dips down, her head goes like this. She spits into a trash can and says, "You taste salty."
Okay.
Because her head and her body or whatever was in my way, I couldn't physically see the tongue touch his head. But I think it's reasonable that if anybody else saw that, they would go, "Oh, hey, I just saw her lick him."
Okay, so let me back up just a little bit. So during this first interview, you don't answer.
Well, I don't, because I couldn't remember all of that at that
Right.
time.
So you leave the
Right.
first interview, but why before you leave, do you specifically ask Captain Vanis, if I remember something, can I come back?
Because I knew my memory was fuzzy. I knew that if I concentrated on it and I had enough time, that I could probably think up and remember what had occurred.
Okay,
And I didn't want to leave it sitting the way I sit. I have a moral obligation to do the best I can, and in order to make sure that truth comes out.
so you leave the first interview. Well, what did you go to do?
I went into the chow hall. I think I had something to eat. I sat down at the table. I started replaying everything that he had just told me.
Okay, did you start replaying the events of
Correct.
your memory?
And what started to stand out was the fact that she said he tasted salty and that she spit into the trash can.
Okay, so during the time that you're in the chow hall, did you call anyone?
I did not.
Did you speak to anyone?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you specifically speak to, or in any way communicate with Officer Sella?
No, I did not.
Did you speak to or in any way communicate with Sergeant Ben West?
No, I did not.
Okay. During the second interview, you go back in and you say, I started to replay the morning in my head again, and so then I do remember her saying about him tasting salty and spitting out, so I'm pretty sure I do remember licking him. And then Captain Vanis specifically asked you, did you witness her licking him? And your entire response is, that I don't I think I did, I think he was sitting in the chair, I don't remember her licking his neck though, I remember her licking like his head. Explain to the board, because
I was
that
putting together,
sentence, okay,
right, because of what it is I remembered seeing, and the statements that she had made, and the actions of her spitting, that was me thinking through my thought process, going, yeah. It makes no other sense, but what she did was lick him,
okay,
right? So, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So in that second interview, that one time, did you say, I remember her licking like his head?
Mhm.
Okay. The end of the interview goes, and of course, in that second interview, you keep saying, but it wasn't sexual. I didn't
Correct.
take it as sexual, and you're still kind of focused on that,
Right.
okay? After that second interview, and you are given notice of your internal affairs investigation, you come to my office, and we meet for the first time, and you are telling me what you're telling the board right now.
Correct.
And at some point, I say, lay out the room for me, okay, and that's when and I said, you didn't have a clear line of sight. I said, no. I said, so, you physically could not and did not see the physical contact between the tongue and the neck, the back of the head. And is it at that point that I instruct you that you then cannot say with certainty that that physical contact happened?
Correct. That's when you told me that if I didn't see tongue-to-skin contact, then I can't say that I saw the lick, regardless of everything else that I did see, regardless of how much sense it makes,
Yeah.
that I couldn't say that I saw the lick because I didn't see tongue-to-skin.
Correct. So then, at that point, you've made an inaccurate statement. So
Correct.
statement number 2, where you connect the dots, I definitely saw the salty, I definitely saw the spitting, so it makes a lot of sense that this lick happened. And so,
Yeah.
okay, so it's an inaccurate. Was it intentional?
No, it wasn't intentional. I wasn't trying to mislead anybody. When I went back in the second time to clarify myself, I had nothing to gain and everything to lose by going in there and tell them, look, you know what? I made a mistake. I did tell you I didn't see it, but you know what? This is what I saw. This is what I heard. I was wrong. Let me clarify myself.
So in the third interview, and I'm with you, and at this point, again, I've instructed you to be very precise in your answers. Explain that the lick was an assumption, you connected a dot, but you didn't physically see it, and that's the reason that you answered the way you did in the third interview.
That is correct.
Okay, I know you're coworkers, obviously, with these people. Are you friends with Officer Sullivan?
I have to say no.
Okay, at the time, certainly go back, were you friends? Did you hang out outside of work? Did you go and have beers together?
The only time we would have hung out outside of work would be if it was another larger group function and there were more people there.
Okay.
And, it was more that kind of thing. I wouldn't say, we were work associates.
Okay, what about, same question for...
Same thing with Captain Hunter.
Okay, and how about Ben West?
Same deal.
Okay.
The only time we would really hang out is if it was at a larger function where multiple people from work were there.
Do you have any guilt for your actions?
No,
And why is that?
because every time I went into that room, and every time he asked me a question, I gave him what I thought and felt was the truth at the time I answered the question.
Is it based on perspective?
It was, it's absolutely based on my perspective. And one of the things that, they teach any investigators is that if you have 10 witnesses that witness something, and you take 10 statements, you can get 10 different answers. That doesn't mean any of them are lying. If you take those same 10 people, and you ask them the same question 2 months later, you might get 10 more answers. Because what they see and what they think they see changes based on time and other outside influences. It doesn't mean at any point were they lying, and I was not at any point lying. What happened was I couldn't remember, I couldn't be 100% in the beginning. I went, it took me 30 minutes. They thought that, that I couldn't recall, that, I said that, it would stand out. You know what, I did remember. But it took me 30 minutes to sit down, collect my thoughts, go back in there and tell them what I saw. And then because I did that, they then opened up an investigation into me. So I sought legal counsel.
If you had it to do over again, when you walked out of the room the first time, should you have just left it alone?
Should I have? No, because I have a moral obligation to go back in there. Has anything good come from me going back in there? Absolutely not.
Mr. Schneider, you've written reports before in the capacity of corrections officer, haven't you?
I have.
Have you ever had to testify in court before?
Yes, I have.
And you've testified here today that if you're not 100% certain the answer is no, who told you that?
That's through different, it was probably during certain classes when they talk about taking investigations. There's also, before I testified, in the case that I testified on, the attorney there was very specific that if you can't be 100% on something, then just say no.
So you're saying today that an attorney has told you, instead of just saying, I'm not sure, you're supposed to say no?
Then it's better to say no.
You talked about the stories changing. If you ask 10 people and you ask 10 people, the truth doesn't change though, does it? If you tell the truth, it's not gonna change, is it?
Your truth, my truth, his truth, and his truth can be 4 different things, but they're all the truth.
But your truth, the next time you tell it, and the next time you tell it should stay the same, shouldn't it? If you told the truth?
Yes, but just like I said, the truth can change based on your perspective.
Well, you don't dispute that you initially, when you were asked by Captain Manis, you specifically whether you saw Captain Hunter lick the back of Sell's head, you said, no, that's something I would remember.
I don't dispute that.
we
You're
heard
right.
the tape.
And it shocked me. When he read it to me, it did shock me.
Okay, because you had never seen her do that before, had you? Licks the back of somebody's head.
Not until that morning, no.
Okay. So that should have been something you should have remembered, shouldn't it?
And it was 30 minutes after he asked me.
Okay, so you came back and 30 minutes later, you say, okay, I do remember her licking his head. Absolutely. You've now told the truth, correct? But then you come back a third time, and when asked the same question, you say, I don't remember her physically licking his head. You don't dispute that that's completely different from what you said in your second interview, do you?
It's not completely different.
It's not.
No.
I didn't see it, I saw it, I didn't see it. What's
What
not?
it was because it was pointed out to me that if I didn't see tongue-to-skin contact, then I can't count that as seeing a lick. But if we had 2 people standing directly in front of me here, or 2 people in front of you, and you saw one bend down, dip their head like this behind another person's head, spit into a trash can and go, oh, you tasted salty. What are you, I mean, and somebody asks you, hey, did you see her lick him? Are you gonna say, oh, no, I didn't see tongue-to-skin contact? Or you're gonna say, oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I saw her licking.
You never told Captain Manis that you didn't have a direct line of sight, or that you're, let me finish my question,
I
or
am.
that you were blocked by Captain Hunter and Captain Sella, and that you were making an assumption, if you will. You never told Captain Manis that, did you?
No, I did not. He also never asked me. And during the 3rd interview, when I tried to elaborate on certain questions, he made it very clear that I was to answer them as a yes or no answer.
Well, we'll let the tape speak for itself. There was a point in time where he asked you a yes or no question, whether or not you had been untruthful, and you didn't want to answer that question, did you? You didn't want to answer that question yes or no, did you?
I was trying to think of the right way to put it.
You didn't want to answer the question yes or no, did you?
I didn't want to answer it with a yes or no. No, I did not.
You never told Captain Manis that you were describing something based on what made sense based on your vantage point, did you? You, in fact, said, I saw her lick the back of his head in your second interview, didn't you?
Yes, that's what I said in the interview, yes.
And you didn't say anything to Captain Manis about, I definitely saw her spitting, and I definitely saw this, but I didn't see this for sure because my vantage point was blocked. You didn't clarify that for him, did you?
That because of my vantage point? No, I did not clarify that my vantage point was good.
You testified that you were not friends with Officer Sella, but you do text with him and talk to him on the phone, don't you?
I have his number, and we have exchanged text.
And since he left employment, you have, haven't you?
A few times.
You ever reported Captain Hunter for giving wet willies in the past prior to this? Something you said you saw frequently?
No, I have not.
Never reported her, never told anybody in your chain of command?
No, I have not.
You also didn't tell Captain Vanis that you saw horseplay that morning, did you?
No, I did not.
So when he asked you, did you see anything unusual?
Well, actually, when he asked me, you know, what I saw, I told him, you know, I saw her messing around with him. I mean, did I actually use the words, oh, I saw some horseplay? No. But I described that, you know, what I saw was this, you know, I didn't think it was sexual, it was just her messing around with him. I did say that.
But in your first interview, when Captain Vanis just asked you a general question, you see anything unusual that day? Do you see any interaction between Sella and Hunter? You told him you couldn't recall, didn't you?
And I couldn't,
And you asked him for specific questions, didn't you?
I did.
And only when he asked you specific questions and read you what Mr. Sella had alleged, did you tell him, oh yeah, I saw them, whatever, if you use the word horseplay or not, I saw them, whatever, fooling around. It was only after he asked you a specific question, correct?
If that's what the record shows, then yeah.
Okay, so you're only gonna tell the truth if you're asked the specific question?
No, I did not want to misspeak. I needed, you know, just like I feel anybody else would, if you're asked something that happened 109 days ago, and you can tell it's a serious situation because you're being called in to an IA investigation, you don't want to just run off with the mouth and like, oh yeah, I think I saw this, I might have saw this. No, I wanted to know what it was I was in there so I could formulate in my head the answers, you know, so I knew what I was saying was pertinent and, yeah, because I couldn't remember. I just honestly, the situation at the time didn't concern me. And I put it out of my mind. Every day is a new day. You know, when you get to the jail and you work there, you see a lot of serious stuff go down. The only way you can deal with that is you treat every day as a new day.
Did you think it was serious when you were called in for an internal investigation and placed under oath?
Yes,
Did you think it was serious when you swore to tell the truth?
yes,
But you didn't tell Captain Vanis in your first interview, look, I just don't remember because it's been too long ago whether or not she licked the back of his head. You said, no, she didn't do that. I would have remembered that, didn't you?
I did say that.
And that was a lie, wasn't it?
No, it was not.
It
Because I
wasn't?
did remember it 30 minutes later.
Okay, so at the time you said it, it wasn't a lie because then you remembered it later and came back and said, I did see her lick him, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but then you came back in the third time and now you're saying, I don't remember her physically licking his head. I did not see that.
Because it was pointed out to me that I couldn't say that anymore.
That's all I have.
Question by the board.
Yeah. Sergeant, did you intentionally deceive anybody?
No, I did not.
You had nothing to gain by intentionally deceiving
I had
anybody?
nothing to gain.
You had everything to lose by deceiving somebody?
Yes, I did.
That's, thank you.
Anything else? Hearing nothing, we'll ask you to step down. Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Thompson, do you have anybody else?
No.
Are you resting?
We rest,
I don't know
yes.
if probably the right word to ask.
We rest.
Okay, so I heard two rests. We need to have summary statements at the end of this. Would anybody like to have a brief break before we do that, or would you like to go straight ahead into it?
That's up to you. I'm ready.
Okay, and again, hearing nothing, we'll call for a summary by the county.
Although it's taken longer than I thought it would. The case I still think is very straightforward. You've heard the testimony, you've heard you've heard the testimony from Mr. Schneider, from the CDs that we listened to, you've also heard from the witnesses, from Captain Vanis as to what was said and the significance of the untruthfulness. Keep in mind that your job is to decide whether or not the employee violated the directives that he was charged with violating. In this case, he was charged with knowingly making a false statement to a supervisor. That's one of them. He was not charged with, it doesn't say he intentionally did it to protect himself or some personal gain. It says very directly, knowingly making a false statement to a supervisor. He was also charged with dishonest or other conduct which reflects unfavorably on the county as an employer. I'll just go through them real quick. And Division of Corrections. I'm sorry, let me read the merit rule number 8. Criminal, dishonest, and this is in the letter of termination, or other conduct which interferes with effective job performance or has an adverse effect on the efficiency of county services. I think you've heard sufficient testimony that the corrections officer who lies under oath and is determined to have been untruthful, his job performance is going to be affected by that. He has testified in court before, and you can use your imagination as to what a defense attorney will do, or a plaintiff's attorney that's suing the county, when they have a star witness who has lied under oath in the past. So his effectiveness as a corrections officer has been greatly diminished because of his own actions. We concede that he was not under investigation. He was it could have been a potentially star witness, if you will, against Captain Hunter, had he just told the truth from the beginning. The testimony is clear. We have prepared, which we'll give to you before your deliberations, a summary of the three statements, not a summary, but a comparison of the three statements. He was asked specifically, did she lick the back of his head? He said no, the first time. The second time he said, yes, she did. The third time he said, no, she didn't. There can't be any clearer discrepancy or untruthfulness than that under oath. He was also charged with the corrections policy and procedure of any staff, all staff shall make or cause to be made accurate, complete, or truthful reports or official records. He knowingly made or caused to be made a false report or falsified an official record. And we believe the evidence is clear and strong that he did it in this case. It's an unfortunate situation. Mr. Reckenwald told you it's not an easy job to fire somebody, especially somebody that's got 11 years with the county and relatively minor past discipline. But there's been consistent discipline within the county, as you heard from Mr. Motes, of people who have lied either under oath or lied to supervisors or made false reports. They have been fired. That's what the standard is in Volusia County. Your personal opinions about it, your rules say you're not supposed to put your personal opinions into your decision making. You have to decide whether the evidence that was presented to you sustained the charges with which he was charged. And if they do, was the discipline that was imposed in this case consistent with other cases in the county? Was it fair? We presented substantial evidence to you today that in fact others have been fired for this same violation. So as difficult as it may be, as I said, Mr. Rectenwald said it was a difficult decision for him. Whatever the reason behind it was, this officer was unable to tell the truth under oath, and he was terminated for it. And we're going to ask at the end of this hearing that you uphold that termination. Thank you.
Thompson?
If the policy is permitted to stand today, then the policy is, you need to get it right the first time. And if you know it's not right the first time, you just need to stay quiet. Because if you come back in and you try to do what they've asked you to do, be honest, you will end up where Nathan Schneider is. That's what the policy, the atmosphere that is being created here is whatever your first response is, even if you have no intent or ill will to complicate a process, but because of your memory at that time, if whatever comes out of your mouth, you better stick with it. And that's unfortunate, because I thought that the point was to get to the truth. And as we all know, memory is a process, okay? It doesn't always come back in a flash of lightning with all the details of who was standing where, and I saw this, and I didn't see this. It doesn't work that way. And you know that. Use your common sense and how you act, how your own memory works. The county says that they're going to give you a summary of the 3 interviews. And I suggest to you that a summary is not appropriate and certainly inaccurate, because you listened to those tapes. And if you read those transcripts, the county wants to pull out 7 words, basically. But they want to forget about the 3 sentences that came before those 7 words, where he's saying, I don't remember, I think, over and over and over again. The investigator, the captain, Captain Vanis, he is trained. His whole point in being there is to elicit information. Even though he's an officer, when you're the person being interviewed, or information is being sought from you, you don't know what it is that they're asking for exactly. So that's the investigator leads you down a path and is supposed to ask questions that elicit the information that you have. And I suggest to you that the investigative process failed Nathan Schneider. It is the investigator who should have asked questions such as, give me the layout of the room, help me understand why you couldn't see it, or why you couldn't hear it. That's the investigator's job. And that failed. That failed here. Termination is the most severe penalty, obviously. After 11 years of service, Mr. Schneider finds himself unemployed. That is appropriate if there's deliberate, willful misconduct, some real intent. It's not, I would suggest to you, appropriate for inaccuracy or incompleteness. Certainly, when that inaccuracy, there are voluntary attempts to cure that. And yes, does he wish that he had answered differently or that he had gone about this differently? No doubt. That's clear. But there's no personal gain in any of this for Mr. Schneider. He doesn't win anything here. Trust and credibility are essential. Absolutely. Don't you want somebody like Nathan Schneider, who when he understands that he has not given a complete picture, he goes back? Because how many of us would not have done that? In fact, he gave the example of inmates when something happens, somebody's hurt, there's a fight, they're the first ones to, no, I didn't see anything, I'm over here. Because they don't want to get involved. Because by getting involved, you have to state something, state a claim, and stick to it. Nathan Schneider knew that his first answers were not complete, and he went back in. And he should not be penalized for trying to do the right thing. The employer is expected to use progressive discipline. An employee should not be discharged until or unless it is clear that the employee will not or cannot respond favorably to lesser penalties. The question before you is, did Nathan Schneider's incomplete statements affect the investigation? Yes, without a doubt. Unintentionally, but they did. What is the appropriate penalty, discipline for that? Is it suspension? Is it demotion? Is it anything up the ladder prior to termination? And we are suggesting and we are asking you to see that yes, there is a wide range of options that is more appropriate for what happened in this situation.
Sharon, last thoughts?
I just wanted to be clear that he is not being terminated for coming back in and correcting his first statement. He was terminated because when he came back in the third time, he told yet another story. And if he came back in after 30 minutes to tell what he remembered had happened, then how come that changed by the time he was interviewed the third time, and now he hasn't seen what he came in and said he saw after 30 minutes? If his story is that he came back in the second time, 30 minutes later, because he remembered something that he'd forgotten to tell Captain Vanis, then the story should have been the same when he came back in January and gave his own statement for his own internal investigation. The truth is the truth. If you tell the truth, it's going to stay the same, and that was the problem for him. He chose not to tell the truth, and it caused him to be terminated.
The last bite at the apple here, I don't know if I'm specifically supposed to do that, but well done. All right, in that case, we'll call the fact-finding portion of this hearing to a conclusion and proceed with deliberations.
We wanted to submit into evidence, and I'll show it to you, Thompson first. It's not really a summary, it's the actual words from the statements. The statements are in evidence. It's a demonstrative exhibit, if you will, as to his statement in each interview with regards specifically to whether or not he saw Captain Hunter lick Officer Sella and or give him a wet letter. And it's just for purposes of clarifying the statements that you listen to.
Just for the record, I would object that it's not a complete.
I remember that from earlier, yes, thank you. Okay, this this has been an exercise in trying to see different sides of the same set of facts from different directions, and I'm gonna try it too, and I'm not sure who's gonna have more success here. Whether we can have more success, or we're gonna have more success, or whether we might have to do the same thing. But that being said, I appreciate the careful presentation by both sides, well done on both sides. I guess I'll just weigh in and put some thoughts out there from my perspective. I think if we're gonna change policies, maybe just start with maybe no wet bullets. That's how it is right out. And I think if we'd gone there in the beginning and focused on that rather than trying, maybe inadvertently or maybe not, I don't even know. If somebody comes in to testify in an IA investigation, and they try and correct it, I don't know any other way to say that there's a discrepancy there. But then when that all-seeing eye of the county turns on you and you say, oh, crud, I'm the one being investigated now, it's gonna make you, make sure that all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted. And I would have brought in counsel at that point too. I just get the feeling that we're here for the wrong purposes today, and I don't know any other way to see it from my perspective, but I'll just throw it out there to start the discussion going. So I'd like to hear from other people.
As one of our missing members of the board said in another meeting, this doesn't pass the smell test to me. I feel like the sergeant was subjected to an internal affairs investigation where the internal affair investigator became sole judge and juror about what he said. I think after 109 days, I have a hard time remembering what I had for dinner 3 days ago. After 109 days, my memory of horseplay going on in a jail, which is pretty common. If you go to any paramilitary unit, you will find horseplay. That is the nature of the men and women in that business, and they're going to engage in some horseplay. I think the internal affairs investigator was overzealous. I don't think the sergeant intended to deceive anybody. I almost feel like I woke up in bizarro world here. I'm having a hard time understanding why the county is paying taxpayer money for men and women in suits to go around and investigate something that could have been settled in 5 minutes in the 2nd grade. Now, the cost of this investigation, all of this time, I think is wasteful, and I think that the sergeant was treated unfairly. I don't feel like the county proved their case that he was lying or deceitful. You know, you take one of those charges, you can spread it out over, it's piling on as far as I'm concerned, and I don't even think we should be here right now.
Joe, I'm hoping you'll get over your natural shyness one of these days.
No, look, I probably will.
Other comments?
I would not want to be in an interview with the captain because I did not understand some of his questions, and they seemed like they were trying to lead him to say a certain answer. I don't think that Mr. Schneider intentionally meant to lie, either any of these, first, second, or third. He was trying to remember something that was 6 months ago. I can't remember what I had for breakfast. I think the county's being unfair. I agree with Judd. I do believe that there should be some kind of discipline, progressive discipline, but not termination.
I'd
Yes,
like to
ma'am.
go ahead and say something. My first time here, what an interesting case. I see both sides of this. I agree with a lot of what you said, but the problem I have with this is you've had 3 interviews. Yes, I mean, no, I didn't see it, yes, I did, no, I didn't. I do agree with the statement that the truth is the truth and it will remain. It absolutely will remain. I find it hard to believe that, first of all, that this, I know that in the workplace there is camaraderie and there is joking and people do things. I think that some of the things that I've heard here is crossing the line for the camaraderie, but I also understand it's a very stressful job. Where I'm stuck is in that third interview, where Mr. Schneider did say, no, I wasn't telling the truth. I mean, he was asked, yes or no, yes or no. And I realized it was like he was pushed into, you have to answer me, yes or no, yes or no. I get that. But he did admit that he did not tell the truth. For that reason, I don't think he should be terminated, but I do think there should be some kind of